You're not just being watched, you're being shaped. Every click, every pause, it's all data. But big tech doesn't just track you, it shapes what you see, believe, and desire. Michel Foucault warned us, the most effective power doesn't punish, it makes you police yourself. That's how modern surveillance works. It doesn't silence you, it makes you hesitate. And in this video, we'll expose how big tech controls way more than you think, and how you can fight back. Not long ago, power wanted to be seen. If you broke the law, punishment wasn't hidden, it was a spectacle. A criminal wasn't just locked away, he was put on display. Bodies were branded, whipped, hanged. The message was clear: step out of line and you will suffer. This is what Michel Foucault called sovereign power, the old way of enforcing obedience. Rule through fear, rule through pain, rule through the public destruction of those who disobey. Foucault, one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century, saw the shift. In his book, Discipline and Punish, he traced how power stopped punishing bodies and started shaping minds. Because here's the thing, when power is obvious, people resist. When you see the chains, the blood, the suffering, you fight back. The French Revolution, the fall of monarchies, the overthrow of dictators. History is full of moments where people saw the ruler's brutality and decided they had enough. So power adapted. It stopped showing its face. Instead of crushing people with brute force, modern societies found a better way: discipline. Instead of breaking bodies, they would shape minds. Prisons replaced public executions. Schools trained students not just in knowledge, but in obedience. Medicine and psychiatry weren't just about health. They played a role in defining what was normal behavior and what needed correction. Institutions didn't just punish rule breakers. They shaped the very idea of what it meant to follow the rules. But control didn't stop there. It expanded. It became more efficient. Those systems still exist, but now they have an ally, a force more pervasive, more seamless, more invisible than before. Big tech. It doesn't need brute force, it doesn't need chains. If you challenge the wrong narrative, your reach is throttled. If your ideas are too edgy, your content doesn't get deleted, it just fades. It stops appearing in feeds, stops being recommended, stops being seen. Big tech doesn't need to silence people outright, it just makes them invisible. This is how modern censorship works, not through force, but through disappearance. And that's just the surface level of control, because the real power, it's not in what gets deleted, it's in what never gets posted in the first place. And the strangest part, no one has to tell you what's off limits. Somehow, you just know. Hey, if you like this analysis so far, consider subscribing, it helps me keep going. No one told you what not to say. No one had to. You just felt it. A hesitation, a pause before posting, a second glance at the message before you hit send, and then you delete it. Maybe you soften the wording, maybe you don't say anything at all. But why? Foucault had an answer. In Discipline and Punish, he described a shift in power, a move away from direct punishment to something far more efficient. Instead of brute force, power would use something else, the feeling of being watched. To explain this, he used a prison design called the Panopticon, a circular prison where inmates couldn't see the guards. From their cells, they could never know if they were being watched at any given moment, so they assumed they were. And that was the genius of it. No whips, no chains, no need for beatings. The prisoners police themselves. Now fast forward to today. The Panopticon isn't just a prison design anymore, it's the world we live in. Because surveillance is no longer limited to security cameras or government agencies. It's woven into the fabric of the internet. And you don't need to be watched to feel watched. You've seen what happens when someone crosses the line. Maybe they become the target of mass outrage. Maybe they get fired over an old post. Maybe their content just stops being promoted. The details don't matter. What matters is that you've learned the rules, even if no one ever told them to you directly, and that's the point. Big tech doesn't have to punish you, it just makes sure you punish yourself first. So you adjust, you make yourself more presentable. You might remove anything that might offend. You edit yourself down until nothing is left that could be a risk. And over time, that hesitation becomes instinct. This is disciplinary power in action. A system where people don't need to be forced into obedience. They shape themselves to fit the system before there's even a need for enforcement. And you see it everywhere. Ever started writing a tweet, then deleted it before posting? Ever held back an opinion because you knew how the internet would react? Ever felt like certain topics were just untouchable? That's not an accident, it's a system working exactly as designed. And here's where it gets worse. No one has to enforce the rules anymore, because once people internalize them, they start enforcing them on each other. A bad take, instantly flooded with attacks. A controversial post, mass reported until it's taken down. A moment of vulnerability, clipped, taken out of context, turned into a joke. And so, the cycle continues. The Panopticon doesn't just make people compliant, it turns them into enforcers. You don't need a warden when the prisoners guard themselves. You don't need a dictator when people silence each other before an authority even steps in. This is the difference between censorship and self-censorship. One requires force, the other just the right conditions. And the worst part? Most people don't even realize it's happening, because when you're inside the system, it doesn't feel like control, it just feels like common sense. But there's something even deeper at play, because if people are shaping their own behavior out of fear, there's one question left to ask. Who's shaping what they believe? You scroll, you click, you watch, you think you're in control. But the system isn't just responding to your choices, it's making them for you. What you see, what you don't, what gets amplified, what quietly disappears. Michel Foucault knew that power isn't just about punishing people, it's about shaping entire populations, guiding them so subtly that they never even realize they're being guided. He called it biopower, the ability to influence not just individuals, but entire societies, to mold their behavior, to determine their choices before they ever make them. And today, that power doesn't belong to governments alone, it belongs to big tech, because the old ways of controlling people, censorship, crackdowns, banning ideas outright, are too obvious. When you see something being silenced, you question it, you wonder what they don't want you to see. But what if there's nothing to notice? What if no one needs to ban ideas because they never even surface in the first place? Algorithms decide what rises to the top. They decide what gets recommended, what spreads, what disappears into digital obscurity. They don't need to tell you what to think. They just curate what you see. At first, it's subtle. You click on a video, another suggestion pops up, then another. The algorithm follows your interests, but it also nudges them, guiding you, shaping your perceptions, narrowing your focus. They're designed to maximize engagement, to keep you watching, scrolling, clicking. And the easiest way to do that? Emotion, conflict, outrage. That's why the most viral content isn't necessarily the most thoughtful. It's the most reactive, the most extreme, the kind that keeps you locked in, debating, arguing, feeding the machine. And once enough people are nudged in a certain direction, it stops feeling like a nudge, it just feels like reality. Not because it's right, not because it's true, but because it's the only thing being shown. And that's the real danger. Not that someone is deliberately lying to you, but that the very structure of the internet ensures you never question what you're seeing. Because when the algorithm controls what you see, it doesn't just shape your knowledge, it shapes your instincts. What feels obvious, what feels normal, what feels like common sense. And once that happens, you don't need force, you don't need censorship. Because people will believe they arrived at these conclusions on their own. And once your emotions are steered in the right direction, you won't just accept what you see, you'll defend it. You'll attack anything that contradicts it. Because when you control what people believe, you don't just control what they think, you control what they feel. And what happens when you control how people feel? You don't just shape their beliefs, you shape their desires. And that's the next step. Because big tech doesn't just want to control what you think, it wants to keep you coming back for more. You wake up, check your phone, a notification, someone liked your post. Feels good, right? That tiny rush, that little hit of validation. It's not random, it's by design. Big tech doesn't need to force you to comply, it just makes you want to. Michel Foucault talked about pastoral power, a form of control that doesn't rely on punishment, but on guidance. Instead of coercion, it shapes your desires. Instead of forcing obedience, it makes obedience feel good. And today, that power runs on dopamine. Every app, every platform, every notification is built to hook you, to keep you coming back, scrolling, clicking, posting, engaging. And the best part? You don't even realize it's happening. We like to think we use social media because it's useful to stay informed, to connect, to share ideas. But let's be honest, most of the time we don't even know why we're still scrolling. We pick up our phones without thinking, open apps on instinct, check notifications, even when we don't care about them. Because social media isn't just a tool, it's a slot machine. The system isn't just rewarding engagement, it's training you. You're not just scrolling, you're playing. Every post, every notification, it's a gamble. And like every good casino, the house always wins. Psychologists call it variable reward reinforcement, the same system casinos use to keep gamblers hooked. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But maybe, just maybe, if you pull the lever one more time, you'll hit the jackpot. And just like that, the platforms condition you to crave that high. The dopamine hit from a retweet, the endorphin rush from a heart on Instagram, the FOMO from a trending post you don't want to miss. And the easiest way to keep you chasing that high? Make sure the system rewards the right behavior. At first, you post freely. You start to notice, some things get engagement, others don't. The algorithm nudges you, certain topics thrive, others disappear. And over time, you don't just say what you think, you say what will be rewarded. And what happens if your post flops? Silence. The algorithm doesn't delete it, it just buries it. No likes, no reach, no engagement. And that's all it takes, because the moment your voice disappears, you start second guessing. Maybe it wasn't worth posting, maybe no one cared, maybe you should stick to what works. So you adjust, you play it safe, you self-censor before the system even has to step in. And just like that, the system doesn't need to control you, because you control yourself. But here's the thing, it's not just about what you say, it's about keeping you on the platform forever. Because the longer you scroll, the more ads you see, the more data you give, the more valuable you become. So the system pulls every trick to keep you hooked. Pages never end, you can scroll forever. Videos autoplay before you can even look away. Notifications bring you back even when you're not thinking about it. Streaks and badges reward you for staying engaged, make you feel like stopping means losing. It's all hacked directly into your brain's reward system, not an accident, not just how social media works. It's deliberate psychological engineering. and it's working. Because even when we know this, we still fall for it. We still check, we still scroll, we still come back for more. So here's the real question. If big tech can steer your emotions, if it can shape what you want, if it can reward you into obedience, then how much of what you do is really your choice? And if you can't stop scrolling, then maybe you're not the user. Maybe you're the product. But what happens when the product decides to fight back? You see it now. This isn't just about social media, it's not just about surveillance, it's about control. Not through force, but through design. You're not being silenced, you're being guided, nudged, trained to think a certain way, to feel a certain way, to crave approval, to fear invisibility. And the most effective part? It doesn't feel like control, it feels like choice. You pick up your phone without thinking, you open up apps on instinct, you scroll, you engage, you comply. Not because anyone told you to, but because the system made it feel so good. This is the Digital Panopticon. Not a prison with walls, but a prison of behavior. But here's the thing, once you see it, you can start breaking free. You don't have to delete everything, you don't have to disappear, but you can start questioning. Why do I see this? Why do I feel this way? Who benefits from my reaction? Because the second you stop running on autopilot, the moment you stop letting algorithms dictate your instincts, the system loses its grip. And that's the real threat to big tech. Not rebellion, not deplatforming, but people who think for themselves. So what happens next? That choice? It's yours, but only if you see it.